Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. First of all, lighting today is really bright, so I apologize in advance. I do prefer to film in natural lighting, so we will just try and work with it. Second of all, in today's video I am going to talk about classics, which is a subject that I've already discussed in previous videos. I think I've made about 2 videos on this subject. One about my Penguin Clothbound classics, which I have been getting a lot of comments about, and one video about reading classics in general and also showing you my Penguin English library editions that we have up there. But I still have a lot to say about classics and I feel like I never get tired of talking about them. So in today's video I would like to first show you all of my classics that I like to collect, the specific editions, because I do have 4 specific editions that I own and that I truly cherish. Second of all, I have been tagged to answer some questions about classics and I've actually settled on 5 on those questions, which I'm going to go into by the end of this video. But anyway, let's just get started. I will first of all show you all of my classics, and why not just start with the ones that I love the most and the ones that you seem to love the most, which are the Penguin Clothbound editions. I'm basically just going to pull out the books and show them to you. The first one here is Middlemarch by George Eliot, and all these books come with a beautiful ribbon and also they are just gorgeous. I will say that these editions are pretty fragile, so that the cover is kind of crumpling when you read them, which is not a good thing, and which is why I have decided to just settle for these books and I'm not going to get any more of these editions, even though they are so pretty. Anyway, here is Middlemarch. Next we have A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Writings by Charles Dickens, and also all of these editions come with a cover that corresponds to the story, and obviously on this one we have snowflakes. Next one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, one of my all-time favorite classics. Then we have a bunch of books by Jane Austen, the first one being Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, which comes in this gorgeous color, as well as Emma. Here is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, another one of my all-time favorites, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Now this one I get a lot of comments about, so I might just show you the actual book close up. Here we have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, as well as Bleak House by Charles Dickens, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, Dracula by Bram Stoker, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Now this one is the one that has my personal favorite cover. I love this. And then my last one of these editions is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. So let's move on to the Penguin English Library editions. These editions come with an orange spine, and I will say that these editions are so much easier to read than these ones I just showed you. And that's because they are paperback, they do not crumble from reading, and they look stunning as well, even though they are not just as stunning as the other ones I just showed you, but still they are pretty fabulous anyway. So here's the first one, Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence, and once again the covers correspond to the actual story. Now I haven't read this one, so I don't know how this cover corresponds to the story, but I will find out eventually. Next we have New Grub Street by George Gissing, Evelina by Frances Burney. I do apologize, the sun is so bright. I've even drawn the curtains, but I don't know how this is going to work. Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, as well as Villette by the same author, Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott, Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, as well as Wives and Daughters by the same author. And I also have a third book by this author. This is North and South. Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, as well as Sense and Sensibility, also by Jane Austen, Howard's End by E.M. Forster, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, This one contains both stories, also Alice Through the Looking Glass, The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, and then last but not least we have 3 books by Thomas Hardy, the first one being The Mayor of Casterbridge, Far from the Madding Crowd, as well as Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Let's move on to the 3rd edition of classics that I collect, and that is these ones that I have waiting for me right here. These are the Persephone classics, and as you can see they are published both in grey but also some with actual covers. Now these editions I love because they are such a luxury to both read but also to hold in your hands, and that's because the pages actually, how can you say this, they actually correlate to the cover so that there are no edges. I don't know really how to explain this, but it feels so good whenever you hold a book like this in your hands. And also they come with the most gorgeous inside covers. I will try and remember to show you all of the inside covers. So this one is The Priory by Dorothy Whipple, and here is the inside cover. Next we have The Winds of Heaven by Monica Dickens, as well as the inside cover. Now I do know that some editions also have a bookmark in them, but I don't seem to have any bookmarks in my editions, unfortunately. But I think that if there is a bookmark, it will be in the same style as the inside cover, which is a pretty neat feature, I think. Then we have Miss Ranskill Comes Home by Barbara Hugh Van Tutt, and here is the gorgeous inside cover. Or is it called Inside Pages? Here we have Someone at a Distance by Dorothy Whipple, and well, this one is a cheat. Why is that? I didn't even know this, but it looks like this on the inside. And here we have High Wages by Dorothy Whipple, and this is what it looks like on the inside. Mariana by Monica Dickens, and once again this is kind of a cheat, but it looks like this on the inside. And then last but not least we have Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson, and this is another one of those kind of cheating ones. At the moment I have 7 of these editions, but I do plan on collecting even more because, as I said, they are an enjoyment to read, and also the stories are so good. I think that I'm not mistaken when I'm saying that these editions are kind of forgotten women classic authors who are now being republished, and I just love them so much. So I'm definitely going to get me more of those Persephone classics in the future. So then last but not least I have some books which are kind of similar, but they are actually published by different publishers, I believe. So the first ones are by Penguin, and they look like this. And as you can see I have 4 of these editions, the first one being Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and also by Dostoevsky I have The Brothers Karamazov. I actually have a second copy of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I also have these 2 classics which are kind of similar, I think, but these ones are called the Wordsworth Classics. And here I have a second copy of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and I also have The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And then very last but not least I have 2 random classics, the first one being 1984 by George Orwell, and then last but not least the book I have read, which is the largest that I own, I think, or at least one of those, and quite an achievement to have read, I think, and that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, also in the Wordsworth Classic edition. And this one, what edition is this? Modern Classics by Penguin. So these were all of my classics on my shelves, or at least most of them, the ones that I collect. Now let's move on to the 5 questions which I was tagged to answer. The original tag video was created by 2 persons. We have Ange from Beyond the Pages, who is also the one who tagged me, and then we have Yamini from The Skeptical Reader. There are a lot more questions to this tag, but the reason why I've settled on only 5 is because I didn't really feel like I had any interesting answers to all of the questions. So I have chosen 5. I hope that's okay. And before this video gets way too long, let's just start on the questions. The first one I have selected is, why do you read classics and how often do you read classics? I read classics because I feel like there must be kind of some fascinating story behind them since they have become classics. Classic books means that it's books that have survived the ages and generations. It's books that are universal and that are still relevant to us today, and I find that quite fascinating. But also because whenever I step into the world of classic, I feel like I am in a completely different world. I feel safe and I feel inspired because I get to learn about this old culture, this old way of living, and it's just pure fascination in my eyes. Now, how often do I read classics? I like to read a classic now and then, maybe 1 or 2 a month. That depends on my mood. I definitely read more classics in the winter months, but all in all, I read classics all year round just because I enjoy them and I know it's going to be a good story whenever I sit down with one, or at least that goes for most of them. Number 2 is, what was the last classic you read? That will have to be The Winds of Heaven by Monica Dickens, and I adored this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I have read another book of hers, which is Mariana, which I have down here. This one was my favorite classic of last year. I gave it 5 stars and I just have such a fascination for Monica Dickens' works. She's actually the niece, I believe, of Charles Dickens, in case you didn't know. I don't really care for Charles Dickens, I must admit, but for this woman I care very deeply. Third question is my favorite classic book cover. Now, I did mention this earlier. When I showed you this book, I said that this has to be one of my favorite covers. I just love the simplicity of this book. The birds, which are red on a black background. I think it looks so nice, so pleasing to the eyes, and even though I haven't read the book, I can sit and stare at it for hours, wondering what are these birds about. I will read this one eventually, of course, but it's just a big one to tackle, so I will have to read it at a time in which I feel inspired to do so. Question number 4 is about my least favorite classic. Well, I do have a few of those, so let me just show you a sample. First of all, I have here Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I know a lot of people love this book. It just wasn't a story for me. I didn't feel good while reading it, and I felt like the main character was quite unbelievable and quite annoying, so I had a hard time getting through this novel, unfortunately. The same goes for Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, which just wasn't a book for me. Last but not least, I would also like to mention Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott, which was fascinating to begin with because it's about these knights and these tournaments, but once I got past that part of it, it became way too boring, way too repetitive, and I just wasn't into it at all. And that leads me to the very last question that I would like to answer, and that is your favorite classic that you would like to recommend to everyone. Now, taste is very subjective, so it's going to be hard for me to recommend a book that I loved and that I think a lot of other people will love. But I will try and do my best. At least I can show you my 2 favorite classics. And that is obviously Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And I say obviously because I have mentioned this one as my favorite classic for a long time on this channel. And the second one that I consider my favorite is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, these 2 books are so different from each other. This one is for you if you like macabre stories, which are mysterious and dramatic, then definitely go for this one. This one is more of a growing up story and a story about love, loss, development, all things that you can think of. I love this book so much. So if you think that's something for you, then definitely pick up Jane Eyre. I have read both of these books twice in my life, and I can definitely say for sure that they are my favorite classics. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, even though the sun is so bright. I think I better stop this video right now. Thank you ever so much for watching, and until next video, happy reading.